All right, what's good, YouTube? This is Boxingwave, and we are back with another fight breakdown. All right, this weekend is we got a hell of a card this weekend on dazn. It's going to be pay per view, unfortunately, but it's a great card. All right, I gave you two breakdowns: devinhaney against Brian Norman Jr. and Anthony Yard against David Benavidez. All the four main fights are going to be title fights, and they're all good quality fights, including this one between Abdullah Mason and Sam Noakes. Now, this fight is supposed to be for the vacant WBO title down at lightweight. Okay. Keyshawn Davis is moving up to 140. I don't know exactly when he's gonna return, but this title is on the line for this fight, and we have two undefeated fighters here. We got Abdullah Mason, who's only 21 years old, with 19 wins, 17 by knockout, no losses, no defeats, no draws. And then you got Sam Noakes, who's 28 years old, and he has 17 wins by with 15 knockouts, no losses, no draws or anything like that. They both got a 90% KO ratio, and even though Sam Noakes is 7 years older than Abdullah Mason, he hasn't been boxing as a pro that much longer. All right, he's been a professional since 2019, and Abdullah Mason has been a pro since 2021. All right, so Sam Noakes. I never heard of him, right? Before this fight, when I heard that Keyshawn was going to be vacated his title, I saw that Sam Noakes was like the number one guy, and with there up there, him and Mason is pretty much the top two guys. And I thought like, okay, let me look up this guy. And I remember when this fight was, announced and stuff, and this is some months back now. And I remember I checked him out, and I said, he looks pretty good. Like, I went through a few fights. I didn't really focus on anything yet, but at the time, I thought he was pretty good. All right, didn't go deep into the film study. I mean, Mason, I've been watching, ever since he's been on Top Rank, so I've been watching all of the fights over there, and I've seen his progress through his career and stuff like that. But Noakes, I didn't know of. So, I wanted to check him out, which I did. But this week specifically, when I started doing the real film study, I was like, oh, okay, this guy's pretty good. Like, he's pretty powerful. I think he's a strong fighter, and he's very basic, not super athletic like Mason. But he sticks to his fundamentals. He's solid across the board, good defense. Like again, good puncher, good pressure fighter. But he can also, box pretty well. He has a solid jab. He's an orthodox fighter, solid jab. Um, like slower feet, but again, his style has been effective all the way up until this point, right? I haven't seen him in a ring with anybody that's really like pushed him though, you know. And there's two key fights because I was looking. I always look when I see a southpaw fighting. I always look for these opponents to see what other southpaws they fought. And the only two relevant fighters that was on his resume here is Ryan Walsh, who's a switcher, and Yvonne Mendy, who I'm very familiar with, who's also a switcher. They're not true, pure southpaw fighters like in Abdullah Mason. So I watched those fights, and those are the two fights that went to distance with Sam Noakes, and all of the other fights with Sam Noakes, it just looked like Sam Noakes was putting the pressure on me. They just weren't on his level. He walked them down. He put them against the ropes and just basically went off on them. You see more combinations. You see more from bullying his opponents. But I haven't seen a fight where someone really pushed them. I mean, even in the Walsh fight, the Mindy fight, Mindy's really past it. Those guys didn't really push him. You know what I mean? We saw more boxing and more rounds from those two. Sam Noakes did go to 12 and everything. I haven't seen anyone really push him. I haven't seen him fight anyone nearly as talented as Abdullah Mason. But I thought he was good enough to beat certain earlier versions of Abdullah Mason. And when we look at Abdullah Mason, we look at the fight with Vasquez. I think we always gonna go back. Johan Vasquez, right? It was a crazy fight. I think I might have been live for that fight. It was just a wild fight, right? There was like three knockdowns in the first round, then Mason stopped them in the second. But Mason was dropped a couple of times in that round. And even when he wasn't dropped, he still got clipped a few times. And I believe from what I remember, Mason would just keep trying to land this nice, fancy looking uppercut, where he's just like in a lead hand and he's pulling back and he's going like this, and it looks so crazy. It reminds me of like prime Andre Berto, right? But Johan would always time it perfectly and throw a hook with it, whether it was a lead hook or that backhand hook, and catch Mason every time he threw this punch. And when I look at those mistakes, which he still makes, he's improved, but he still makes certain mistakes where I think he's there to get hit. I don't know how good his chin is, but I know in that fight he got rocked a few times. Now, maybe that was because he was underestimating his opponent. Obviously, Johan wasn't, a world beater or anything like that. So maybe he looked like a smaller guy. I'm going to take this guy out. And he was doing too much showboating. You know what I mean? And I think he paid for it in that fight. But if it was a guy like Sam Noakes in that fight that night, Sam Noakes would have got busy. He would have put like a punishment on Abdullah Mason boxing like that. So I do think I do think Noakes has a shot. He has a puncher's chance. I like his fundamentals, again, very, very basic, not nearly as unorthodox as a Mason or athletic as a Mason. But I like the traditional style on him. Yeah, slow feet, slow hands, but powerful, effective. You know what I mean? Very strong. And keeps his hands up. Nothing fancy, nothing flashy when it comes to him. What I'm saying is, when it comes to Sam Noakes, I think for a Mason that makes mistakes, which I've seen him do, I do believe that Noakes can take advantage of a Mason that's fighting poorly and beat him in that sense. He would have a shot in beating Mason. But when I see Mason and I seen his last performance against Jeremiah Nakatillo, which by name is the best fighter he's faced up to this point. I mean, he just, of course, Nakatillo has passed it, but he's been in there with a few fighters, including Shakur Stevenson. Good fighter, controls distance decent. I mean, he's a decent solid fighter. Again, he's not a world beater neither, especially at this point in his career. He doesn't even really have his legs like that. But I've seen the improvements in Mason in that fight versus the version of Mason I saw against the Vasquez guy like last year. So I like that Mason. I like that, Mason being a tall, rangy southpaw. You got to understand something. Mason has a 74-inch reach at 21 years old. All right. He's 5'9". He's about an inch taller than Sam Noakes. Now, I don't know what Sam Noakes' official reach is, but I can look at his fights and tell that he doesn't have long arms. Mason's arms are 1 inch shorter than Arislani Lara, who always had a reach advantage over everybody. He has longer arms than everybody else at lightweight. I mean, that includes Shakur, Keyshawn Davis, Tank Davis, anybody that's been there recently, like Tiafimo or I didn't check devinhaney, but I actually compared. Like, he has 74-inch reach. He needs to use it and perfect that. And I bring up guys like Lara because Lara is a guy that has one or two weapons, but he perfected that. And as a southpaw, what he does not do is overextend with his jab, and he rarely overextends with the left hand. You know what I mean? He's a sniper. He's always able to shoot it and pull back into position to where he can't get countered so easily. Whereas Mason still working on that. For a guy that's really long arms and moves as well as he does, he still steps in and leans forward too far in when he's shooting the jab, or even when he's shooting the left hand. I like his foot positioning. I like that he always tries to keep that lead foot on the outside of his opponent. But as far as reaching, he overextends. And I think that is what leads him to get countered. Also, that uppercut that I was talking about earlier, he still throws it. And I just think that he doesn't keep that other hand up when he's throwing that uppercut. It looks good. It looks fancy. He loves that punch. It's probably his favorite punch. But that is his kryptonite at the same time. If he can work on tightening that defense a little bit more, or I don't know if it's a defense because sometimes his hands is up, maybe the balance is off, maybe he'll fall over. He wasn't hurt in the Vasquez fight. Clearly, when he dropped Vasquez was definitely more hurt. But if you're going to start fighting bigger punchers, you don't want to get clipped with that kind of punch making that mistake. You know, again, I just think that I'm not as sold on him like a lot of other people. A lot of American fans like myself, we get hyped off a lot of, you know, I mean, anybody would get hyped off, depending, no matter where you're from. People are going to get hyped off a prospect, and a lot of us are excited about Abdullah Mason, and just like I was with Jared Anderson. I was excited about him. He was a heavyweight. He was an American. He was knocking dudes out. He could switch. He could do all of that. But I still want to see more. I'm more sold on a guy like Moses Atama, who's like the same age, but I've been more impressed with what he's done on every level. I still think that there's more I want to see from him too. But the way people talk about Mason sometimes, I've seen people say, "Oh, I think he beats everybody. I think he beats Keyshawn. I think he beats Shakur. I think he's going to be the next big thing." I think he could be the next big thing, but I think there's obvious flaws there that certain fighters, potentially Sam Noakes, can take advantage of if he makes these mistakes. I think Mason is a favorite. I think he should be the favorite. I like the fact that he's not a huge favorite. I think he might be like a 3-1 or 4-1 favorite, something like that. Last time I checked, I think he should be the favorite, but I expect this to be a longer night for him than we seen before. He's never gone past 6 rounds. Noakes have gone to 12, 2 different fights, but those guys he went to 12 with are not nearly as good as Mason. So both of these guys are coming into a fight with no huge names on their resume. You know what I mean? They haven't fought any prime world beaters up to this point. Noakes haven't really fought a pure southpaw fighter, athletic fighter, a guy with this kind of reach like a Mason. But Mason hasn't fought a guy that's also in his prime as well, that is just strong, sturdy, you know what I mean? And has enough fundamentals, good, decent counter punching, good timing. A guy like Noakes is actually good for a championship fight. And I thought it was a little too soon. I thought it was too soon, and I said this on camera. I thought it was too soon when he could have potentially fought Keyshawn Davis. I thought it was way too soon. But it didn't happen. And now I think for a title fight, I think this is a proper fight to see what he can really do. I think Noakes can push what he can really do in there. And I think the same with Sam Noakes. Both of these guys, big question mark. But this will show what they can really do. What I will say about Mason, before I give you my prediction, what I will say is that I think he needs to learn. I like the fact that he's there with his father, his brothers. He's very, very mature. In the ring, he could be a little bit wild, but in outside of the ring, he seems to be very mature. He seems to listen to his corner. What I will say is he needs to learn how to get the feeling in the first 2 rounds. All the elite fighters, they do it. They want to see what you got. They want to fill you out, from the Crawfords to the Canelos. Those guys want to fill you out. You don't come into a fight like you did against Vasquez and just, if the knockout is there early, that's great. But don't come in there and just think you can just blow this guy away. See what you can do, measure him, get the distance. And that's what Sam Noakes has done. I've seen him measure his opponents. I think he's good framing on the inside. I actually think Noakes might be the better fighter on the inside, slightly. Might be, you know. He would need to be, because he would need to get close in order to really, get his offense off, in my opinion, especially with a guy with a 74-inch reach as a lightweight. Um, but I think that Mason needs to learn his opponent and just gradually open up more per round. I think that's a huge part of maturity in the ring. And if we see that, I think he's not going to have too much of a problem in this fight. I definitely watched Noakes first, and I was like, at first I was like, I don't know, I think this could be a problem for Mason, depending on how Mason fights. He could be a problem. But I like the Jeremiah Nakatilia fight. I really like that performance, and I expect him to be even better because he's improving with each fight. And I think overall, he's going to have what it takes to beat Sam Noakes this weekend. Noakes is good, he's strong, but I didn't see anything special in those two 12-rounders. I think Mason is miles above those guys. And I think if Sam Noakes might have destroyed those two, like the way he did his other opponents, I would have like huge questions on maybe a potential upset. But I just think that Mason's going to be too much. That jab, that left hand, his movement, the distance, it's going to go further than 6 rounds. I don't know if he can stop Noakes because Noakes, again, looks very strong, sturdy. Looks like a durable guy. So I don't think he's going to get him out of there. All right. I don't think he's going to get him out of there. But if he does get him out of there, it's because it's going to be the amount of punishment he puts on him throughout the rounds to where maybe you get a corner stoppage or TKO type of thing. I'm not seeing a knockout. I'm thinking it's like a stoppage type of thing late. I'm thinking after the 9th round if he continues to stick with the plan. I just think he's just too athletic. And if he, I like the fact that he's keeping his hands up more. I think right now is the proper time to fight this fight. So I have Abdullah Mason winning. I say Abdullah, I say Abdullah. I don't know which one is the actual right way to say it. But I think the safe pick is I think a decision win sounds good. I think a decision win sounds good or very late, 9th, 10th, 11th round stoppage, corner stoppage because of punishment. All right. Just be careful with those uppercuts on the inside, man. Don't get countered with a backhand, right hand. That's what I'm concerned about. Outside of that, I think Mason has all the other advantages here. All right. So anyway, that is my breakdown. I have one more to do with Bam Rodriguez. We got that one coming up. I haven't even begun. It's Thursday. We 2 days away, and I haven't even begun doing film study on that. I don't have to do a lot because I've seen Martinez and Bam fight a bunch of times, and I kind of know where I'm going with that. So I'll try to get that out there. If not by today, by tomorrow. And I'll see you guys Saturday. All right. Y'all have a good day. Peace. Oh, please like the video if you enjoy it. Share and subscribe. I'll see you guys soon. Peace.